The morning sun cast long shadows across the Seoul Command Center as Admiral Park Taman sipped his coffee and reviewed the daily intelligence reports. It was supposed to be another routine day of monitoring space traffic and coordinating with Allied forces. The large screens around the room displayed normal patterns of satellite movements and commercial flights crossing the Pacific. Then everything changed. The first alarm sounded at exactly 08 for 7 hours. Lieutenant Lee Junho's voice cracked as he called out from his station. "Sir, we have multiple contacts entering the atmosphere. They're not showing any identification signals." Park Taman set down his coffee cup and walked to the main display. What he saw made his blood run cold. Hundreds of sleek metallic vessels were descending through Earth's atmosphere like silver teardrops. They moved in perfect formation, their surfaces gleaming with an otherworldly light that seemed to bend and shift. Colonel Kim Sora rushed to her station, her fingers flying over the tactical interface. "Admiral, these ships are massive. The largest ones are over 2 kilometers long. They're not matching any known aircraft designs in our database." The alien vessels moved with impossible grace, defying the laws of physics that governed human flight. They seemed to glide through the air without any visible propulsion systems, their energy shields creating rippling patterns that reminded Park Taman of water disturbed by a stone. Sir Lee Junho called out again, his voice steadier now but filled with concern. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies. The message is repeating in multiple languages, including Korean, English, Chinese, and dozens of others." Park Taman nodded grimly. "Put it on the main speakers." The voice that filled the command center was cold and mechanical, processed through some kind of translation device that made it sound barely human. "People of Earth, you are now under the protection of the Valoth Empire. Your primitive weapons and defenses are useless against our technology. Surrender immediately, and you will be treated fairly. Resistance will result in the destruction of your cities and the death of millions." The message repeated 3 times before cutting off, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Park Taman felt his hands clench into fists as he processed what he had just heard. These aliens, whoever they were, had come to Earth not as visitors or explorers, but as conquerors. Captain Choi Min-soo burst through the reinforced doors of the command center, his uniform torn and his face streaked with dirt. "Admiral, they've hit our orbital defense platforms. The laser satellites are gone, and our missile defense systems are offline." He paused, catching his breath. "But sir, there's something strange. They targeted our military installations with surgical precision, but they left our manufacturing facilities completely untouched." Park Taman's mind raced as he processed this information. The aliens had demonstrated their superior technology by destroying Earth's most advanced defensive systems. But they had been careful not to damage the infrastructure they would need to exploit human labor. It was a clear message: submit or die. But either way, they planned to use humanity for their own purposes. Sir Colonel Kim Sora reported, her voice tight with controlled anger. "We're receiving reports from around the globe. The aliens have positioned their ships over every major city. London, New York, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, they're all under the same threat." The main display showed a global map with red dots marking the positions of alien vessels. The coverage was complete and systematic, the work of a military force that had studied Earth's defenses for years. These beings had planned this invasion down to the smallest detail. Park Taman walked to the communications console and activated the emergency broadcast system. "All forces worldwide, this is Admiral Park Taman of the Seoul Command Center. We are under attack by hostile alien forces. Execute Protocol Defiant immediately. This is not a drill." Protocol Defiant was humanity's last resort plan developed during the Cold War, but updated for modern threats. It called for the immediate activation of hidden bunkers, the mobilization of civilian resistance networks, and the coordination of asymmetric warfare tactics that could be used against a technologically superior enemy. Around the world, the protocol began to take effect. In underground facilities beneath major cities, scientists like Dr. Yang Ji-hai received emergency orders to begin analyzing any alien technology they could get their hands on. Military personnel like Sergeant Kim Dong-woo prepared for guerrilla warfare, ready to use every dirty trick in the book to make the aliens pay for their arrogance. The Veloth Empire had made a critical error in their calculations. They had studied human technology and found it primitive. They had observed human conflicts and seen only chaos and disorganization. They had monitored human communications and heard only weakness and division, but they had failed to understand the one thing that made humanity truly dangerous. When faced with extinction, humans did not surrender. They adapted, they innovated, and they fought with a desperation that could overcome any technological advantage Commander Veltar stood in. His flagship, watching the primitive planet below through the ship's viewing portal, his species had conquered 17 star systems using the same tactics. Demonstrate overwhelming force, offer surrender terms, and then exploit the defeated population's resources. It had never failed as he watched the tiny lights of human cities twinkling in the darkness. Veltar felt confident that this conquest would be as easy as all the others. The humans would see reason and submit within hours. He had no idea that he had just awakened something far more dangerous than any enemy the Veloth Empire had ever faced. The morning of the fourth day brought an eerie silence to the streets of Los Angeles. Commander Veltar stood on the balcony of his temporary command post, a converted human office building that now housed the nerve center of the Veloth occupation. The city stretched out below him, its highways empty, except for the occasional patrol of his forces. Something was wrong. In his long career of conquest, Veltar had never encountered a species that behaved like these humans. The Crystalline Collective had surrendered after their first city was destroyed. The Zephyrian hegemony had begged for mercy within hours of the initial assault. But these humans, they simply vanished. Sub-Commander Krelthon, report, Eldar called as his second-in-command. Entered the room. Krelthon's usually composed demeanor showed cracks of frustration. Sir, we control every major city on the planet, but the humans refuse to acknowledge our authority. They don't mass for battle where we can defeat them decisively. Instead, they disappear into their cities' underground systems, into the wilderness, into places our sensors cannot easily penetrate. Veltar studied the tactical display showing red dots representing his forces in the vast, empty spaces where millions of humans had simply gone. What about their leadership? Have we captured any of their military commanders? That's the problem, sir. They don't seem to have a traditional command structure. When we eliminate one leader, 3 more take their place. When we destroy one base, they operate from 10 different locations. It's like trying to fight smoke. It's thousands of miles away, in the ruins of a Seoul electronics factory. Dr. Yang Ji-hai worked by the light of a single lamp powered by a car battery. Her team of engineers and scientists had been working around the clock, examining pieces of alien technology recovered from the first day's battles. The factory's roof had been blown off by a Veloth plasma blast, but the underground workshops remained intact. Pass me the frequency scanner, she called to her assistant, Lee Min-young. I think I've found something important. Yang Ji-hai held up a piece of metal that had once been part of a Veloth fighter's shield generator. The surface was covered in strange markings that seemed to shift and change as she examined them. These aren't just decorative patterns. Instructions. The shield frequency changes according to a mathematical formula. She connected the scanner to her laptop, a device that had been modified with components from a dozen different human electronics. The screen filled with numbers and graphs showing wave patterns. Look at this. The shields rotate through different frequencies to prevent sustained attacks, but the rotation follows a predictable sequence. If we can calculate the pattern. Her radio crackled to life. Dr. Yang, this is Colonel Kim Sora. What's your status? Colonel, I think we found their weakness. The Veloth shields aren't invincible. They operate on a rotating frequency system, but we can predict when they'll be vulnerable. There was a pause on the other end of the radio. Are you certain? We need to be sure before we risk lives on this information. I'm 90% confident. We need to test it, but I believe we can time our attacks to hit them when their shields are at their weakest point in the rotation cycle. In the mountains. Outside Busan, Sergeant Kim Dong-woo crouched behind a fallen tree, watching a Valith patrol move through the valley below. His team consisted of 20 soldiers and civilians, including Park Hyun-woo, a former video game designer who had joined. The resistance after his apartment building was destroyed in the first attack. "They're following the same route they used yesterday," Hyun-woo whispered, checking his hand-drawn map. "Same spacing between vehicles, same speed, same stops at the same locations." Kim Dong-woo nodded grimly. "In the army we call that patterns. And patterns get you killed." Hyun-woo had proven to be surprisingly valuable to the resistance. His years of designing artificial intelligence for video games had given him an unusual ability to predict how the aliens would behave. There too. "Organized," he continued. "Their entire culture seems built around following rules and procedures. They can't adapt to chaos the way humans can." "What do you mean?" asked Private Yoon Dae-yoon, a young soldier who had been separated from her unit on the first day. "Think about it," Hyun-woo explained. "In human warfare, if your enemy starts using a new tactic, you change your response immediately. But these aliens? They stick to their standard procedures even when those procedures aren't working. They're like a computer program that can't rewrite itself." Kim Dong-woo's radio buzzed with an encrypted message from Dr. Yang Ji-hai. After listening to her explanation about the shield frequencies, he gathered his team for a final briefing. "We're going to test the doctor's theory tonight. If she's right, we can hurt these aliens. If she's wrong, ... he shrugged. Well, we're probably dead either way." Darkness fell. Kim Dong-woo's team moved into position along the patrol route. They had prepared simple explosives using fertilizer and fuel oil, devices that would have been useless against the aliens' advanced shields under normal circumstances. But if Yang Ji-hai was correct, timing would be everything. The Valoth patrol appeared exactly on schedule, their vehicles gliding silently through the mountain pass. Kim Dong-woo watched the timer on his modified watch, counting down the seconds, until the shields would theoretically be at their weakest point. "Now," he whispered into his radio. The explosions lit up the night sky. For a moment, Kim Dong-woo thought they had failed. The alien vehicles seemed untouched, their shields still glowing with protective energy. Then slowly, two of the transports began to list to one side. Their shields flickered and died, and the vehicles crashed into the mountainside. The remaining aliens returned fire, but their shots went wide. They were clearly shocked that their supposedly invincible technology had failed. In the confusion, Kim Dong-woo's team melted back into the forest. Leaving behind only the burning wreckage of alien vehicles, Commander Veltar received the report an hour later. As he read the details of the attack, his confidence began to crack. For the first time in his career, he was facing an enemy that learned from every encounter, adapted to every countermeasure. It seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. The underground bunker beneath Seoul had once been a subway maintenance facility. Now, it served as the beating heart of humanity's resistance against the Valoth Empire. Admiral Park Taemin stood before a wall of salvaged computer screens, each one showing a different part of the global war effort. The air was thick with the smell of oil, metal, and human sweat. Admiral Lieutenant Lee Jun-ho called from his makeshift communications station. "We're getting a transmission from the London cell. They say they've accomplished something incredible." Park Taemin walked over to Lee's station, stepping carefully around the cables and equipment that covered the bunker floor. The voice that came through the speakers was heavily accented with British English, but the excitement was unmistakable. "This is Chen speaking from London Underground. We've done it, Admiral. We've broken into their communication system. My team includes former MI6 hackers, Russian cyber warfare specialists, and even a few Americans from the NSA. We're all working together now." The Admiral felt a grim smile cross his face. The alien invasion had created something unprecedented. In human history, nations that had been enemies for generations were now sharing their most closely guarded secrets. Chinese hackers worked alongside American programmers. Russian engineers collaborated with Israeli technicians. The threat of extinction had united humanity in ways that decades of diplomacy never could. "What kind of intelligence are you getting?" Park Taemin asked. "Everything, sir. Fleet movements, supply schedules, even personal communications between their commanders." These aliens encrypt their signals, but they use mathematical patterns that human computers can break. We're feeding real-time information to resistance cells across Europe. Dr. Yang Jihai's voice crackled through another radio channel. Admiral, this is Yang reporting from the research facility. We've made a breakthrough with their targeting systems. Valeth used quantum-based computers to calculate their weapon trajectories, but we've found a way to interfere with the quantum field. Park Taman switched to her frequency. Explain it in simple terms, Doctor. Think of it like this, sir. Their weapons are like very smart arrows that can change direction in flight to hit their target. But if we can confuse the arrow about where the target is, it will miss completely. Captain Choi Minsu's team is ready to test our countermeasures in the field. Above ground, the city of Seoul was a wasteland of broken buildings and burning wreckage. But beneath the surface, in the tunnels and sewers that the aliens had dismissed as unimportant, humanity's war machine grew stronger each day. The resistance had learned to move like ghosts through the underground networks, using maintenance tunnels, storm drains, and forgotten passages to avoid detection. Private Yoon Dae-yoon crawled through a narrow ventilation shaft, carrying a backpack full of modified electronics. Behind her, Park Hyun-woo followed with his own equipment. They had been tasked with installing Yang Jihai's countermeasures in strategic locations throughout the city. How much further? Yang-woo whispered. 200 meters, Dae-yoon replied. We're almost directly beneath their command post. They had been moving for 3 hours through the dark, cramped spaces beneath the city. The work was dangerous and exhausting. But it was also proof of humanity's greatest strength, the ability to adapt and survive in any environment. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Commander Veltar paced the bridge of his flagship, his confidence. Cracking like ice in spring, reports flooding in from around the globe painted a picture of military disaster. Earth was supposed to have been conquered within days. Instead, it had become a nightmare that seemed to grow worse with each passing hour. Sub-Commander Krelthan, give me the latest casualty reports, Veltar commanded. Krelthan, his hands shook as he consulted his datapad. Sir, we've lost 37 patrol ships, 15 supply transports, and over 2,000 personnel. The humans are not fighting like any species in our records. They don't mass for battle where we can defeat them with superior firepower. Instead, they attack our weak points, supply lines, communication relays, even our support vessels. Veltar slammed his fist on the control console. How are they coordinating these attacks? We've destroyed their military command centers, eliminated. Their leaders disrupted their communications. That's just it, sir. They don't seem to need centralized command. They operate in small, independent cells that can function without orders from above. When we destroy one cell, 3 more take its place. It's like trying to fight a virus that spreads faster than we can contain it. The sub-commander paused, consulting another report. There's something else, sir. The humans are using psychological warfare. They've captured several of our communication devices and are broadcasting distress signals from our own people. They're also transmitting recordings of our casualties, screaming for help. It's affecting morale among our forces. Veltar felt a chill run down his spine. The Valeth Empire had conquered 17 star systems, but they had always fought honorable enemies who followed the rules of civilized warfare. These humans seemed to have no rules at all. They fought dirty, used every trick they could think of, and seemed to take pleasure in causing their enemies to suffer. Sir Krelthan continued, his voice barely above a whisper. There's one more thing. The humans have captured 3 of our patrol ships. Our long-range sensors show that they're modifying them. They're combining our technology with their own in ways we never imagined possible. Veltar stared out at the blue planet below, its surface dotted with the lights of human cities that still refused to surrender. For the first time in his military career, he began to wonder if the Veloth Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had come to Earth expecting to conquer sheep. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous than any enemy they had ever faced. The war room aboard the Veloth flagship had become a place of nightmares for Commander Veltar. 1 month ago, he had stood in this same room, confident that Earth would fall within days. Now, the holographic displays showed a solar system crawling with human forces. many of them flying ships that had once belonged to his own fleet. Commander? Sub-Commander Krelthan entered the room, his usually perfect uniform wrinkled and stained. The supply convoy from the Outer Rim has been attacked. Only 2 ships survived out of 12. Veltar's clawed hands gripped the edge of the tactical table until his knuckles turned white. How many ships do the humans have now? Our intelligence suggests they've captured and modified over 60 of our vessels. But that's not the worst part, sir. They're not just copying our technology, they're improving it. Their modifications make our ships faster, more maneuverable, and somehow more deadly than our original designs. The commander stared at the display showing Earth's orbital space. Red dots representing human forces outnumbered his own blue markers by almost 2 to 1. This is impossible. We conquered the Zephyrian hegemony in 3 days. The crystalline collective begged for mercy after we destroyed a single city. Krelthan's response came in a voice so quiet it was barely audible. Those species were civilized, Commander. They had rules about warfare, codes of honor, limits on what they would do to win. Humans. Humans don't seem to have any rules at all. Far from the Veloth flagship, Captain Choi Min-soo floated in the pilot's seat of what had once been an enemy patrol ship. The vessel's original sleek design had been modified with human technology. Missile pods salvaged from Earth's defense. Satellites were welded to the hull. The engine had been upgraded with parts from a dozen different human spacecraft. The result was a hybrid that combined alien sophistication with human ingenuity. All ships, this is Captain Choi. He spoke into the communication system. We have visual contact with the enemy supply convoy. Remember the plan. We don't fight. Fair. We fight to win. His fleet consisted of 23 vessels, each one a unique combination of human and alien technology. The crews were just as mixed. Former enemies worked side by side. American pilots flew alongside Russian engineers. Chinese technicians worked with Japanese weapons specialists, and Korean commanders coordinated with European navigators. Park. Hyen Woo's voice crackled through the comm system from his position aboard the command ship. Captain, I'm reading their formation. They're following standard Veloth convoy protection protocols. That means they'll expect us to target their escort fighters first, then go for the supply ships. What do you recommend? Choi asked. We do the opposite. Ignore their weapons. Ignore their engines. Hit their life support systems first. Their superior technology means nothing if they can't breathe. The battle began with a coordinated strike that would have horrified military strategists from any civilized species. The human fleet didn't engage in honorable combat. Instead, they swarmed the Veloth convoy like a pack of wolves attacking a herd of deer. They targeted the weakest ships first, using debris from destroyed vessels as weapons against the survivors. Private Yoon Dae-yoon piloted a modified fighter that had been built from the wreckage of 3 different alien craft. Her weapon systems were controlled by a joystick salvaged from a video game console, connected to targeting computers that Dr. Yang Ji-hai's team had reverse-engineered from alien technology. This is Yoon, she reported as she fired a missile. At a Veloth transport, target is losing atmosphere. They're trying to evacuate, but their escape pods are malfunctioning. The human pilots had learned to exploit every weakness in alien technology. They broadcast false distress signals to confuse enemy sensors. They used psychological warfare, playing recordings of alien screams over open communication channels. They even rammed damaged human ships into enemy vessels, using them as guided missiles. On Earth's surface, Admiral Park Taemin watched the battle unfold from his underground command center. The displays showed human forces advancing on every front. The aliens' perfect formations were crumbling under the assault of an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. Colonel Kim Sora, report on the ground offensive. He commanded. Kim Sora's voice came through the radio from her position, leading assault teams in the ruins of Seoul. Admiral, we're pushing the aliens back on all fronts. Our new weapons are working perfectly. The combination of human manufacturing techniques with alien technology has created things the Veloth never imagined possible. Our teams carried rifles that fired bullets made from alien metal, guided by targeting systems that could track enemies through walls. They used grenades that exploded with alien plasma, but were triggered by simple human timers. They wore body armor that combined human Kevlar with alien energy shields. "Sir," Lieutenant Lee Jun-ho called from his communications station. "We're intercepting Veloth military communications. They're asking for reinforcements from their home worlds." Park Taemin allowed himself a grim smile. What's the response? The Veloth High Command is refusing to send more ships. They're calling Earth a death trap and recommending that all forces withdraw immediately. The tide of war had turned completely. The Veloth Empire, which had conquered 17 star systems, was being defeated by a species they had considered primitive. The aliens' advanced technology, their superior numbers, and their centuries of military experience meant nothing against humanity's chaotic, unpredictable, and utterly ruthless style of warfare. Commander Veltar received the final reports in his private quarters. Alone, except for the ghosts of his failures, the humans had done more than defeat his invasion force. They had humiliated the entire Veloth Empire, proving that technological superiority meant nothing without the will to use every possible advantage. The hunters had become the hunted. The galaxy would never be the same. The escape pod drifted through the cold emptiness of space, its hull scarred by human weapons fire. Inside, Commander Veltar sat hunched over a communication device, his once-proud uniform torn and stained with the blood of his fallen soldiers. Around him, the debris of what had been the most powerful invasion fleet in Veloth history floated, like metallic snow against the starfield. Final report, Commander Veltar, to Veloth High Command. He spoke into the recording device, his voice barely above a whisper. Mission status: complete failure. Invasion force strength: fewer than 1,000 survivors from an original force of 53,000 personnel. His hands shook as he continued the report that would end his military career and possibly his life. The Veloth Empire did not tolerate failure, especially not failure on this scale. Species classification update required. Humans of planet Earth. Previous threat assessment: minimal. New assessment: extinction class threat: immediate. Quarantine of Sol system recommended. Under no circumstances should any Veloth vessel approach Earth. Through the small porthole of his escape pod, Veltar could see human ships patrolling the debris field like sharks circling wounded prey. The vessels were a terrifying combination of alien technology and human innovation. They moved with the grace of Veloth designs but carried weapons that no civilized species would ever consider building. Personal note, he continued, his voice cracking with emotion. The humans do not fight like any species in our records. They have no honor, no rules, no limits on what they will do to win. They turn our own technology against us. They target civilians. They use psychological warfare that breaks the minds of our warriors. They are not just dangerous, they are evil. The escape pod's communication system crackled with transmissions from other survivors. Veltar listened to the broken voices of his former officers, many of them speaking in languages that weren't Veloth. The humans had somehow corrupted their minds, teaching them human words and concepts that had no place in civilized society. On Earth, Admiral Park Taemin stood in the rebuilt Sol Command Center, watching the last alien ships disappear into the darkness of space. The building around him was new, constructed from the wreckage of human and alien technology in a style that would have been impossible before the invasion. The walls were lined with displays showing the current status of humanity's new fleet. Admiral Dr. Yang Ji-hai called from her workstation. The final count is complete. We've captured and modified 78 Veloth vessels. With our new construction techniques, we should be able to build 50 more ships within 6 months. Park Taemin nodded with satisfaction. The alien invasion had been a disaster for the Veloth Empire, but it had been a gift to humanity. The forced cooperation between former enemies had advanced human technology by centuries. Nations that had been preparing for war with each other were now working together to build a fleet that could carry humanity to the stars. Captain Choi Min-soo's voice came through the communication system from his position aboard the captured Veloth flagship. Admiral, our long-range sensors are detecting something interesting. We're picking up radio transmissions from at least a dozen different alien civilizations. They're all monitoring our broadcasts. What kind of transmissions? Park Taman asked. They're trying to learn about us, sir. Some of them are studying our language. Others are analyzing our technology. But from what we can translate, they're all asking the same question. How did a primitive species defeat the Veloth Empire? Colonel Kim Sora looked up from her tactical display with a grim smile. Let them wonder. Let them be afraid. The galaxy just learned that humanity is not prey. The communication console began beeping with incoming messages. Lieutenant Lee Junho's eyes widened as he read the displays. Sir, we're receiving diplomatic communications from 17 different alien species. They're offering trade agreements, non-aggression pacts, technology exchanges, and He paused, reading the next message. Cultural exchange programs. Park Taman walked over to examine the messages himself. The alien communications were all similar in tone. They were respectful, almost fearful, and eager to establish friendly relations with humanity. The species that had ignored Earth for centuries were now desperate to avoid humanity's anger. What should we tell them? Lee Junho asked. Tell them we're willing to talk, Park Taman replied. But make it clear that we negotiate from a position of strength. Any species that threatens humanity will face the same fate as the Veloth Empire. Private Yoon Dayun entered the command center, carrying a datapad with the latest intelligence. Reports. She had been promoted to lieutenant after her actions during the space battles, and now served as the liaison between the military and the civilian resistance groups. Admiral, she reported, we've completed the interrogation of the Veloth prisoners. They've provided us with detailed information about their empire structure, their technology, and their military capabilities. They've also given us the locations of their homeworlds and their major colonies. Park Taman studied the data. With interest, are they cooperating willingly? More than willingly, sir. They seem genuinely terrified of us. Some of them have asked for asylum, claiming they don't want to return to the Veloth Empire. They say their own people will execute them for losing to a primitive species. Dr. Young Ji-hai looked up from her work on the new spacecraft designs. Admiral, with the information we've gathered, we could build ships capable of reaching any star system within 50 light-years of Earth. We could establish colonies, explore new worlds, even. Even what, Doctor? Park Taman asked. Even take the fight to them, sir? If any alien species threatens humanity again, we now have the capability to strike back at their home worlds. The command center fell silent as the implications of Yang Ji-hai's words sank in. Humanity had not just survived the alien invasion. They had emerged stronger, more united, and more dangerous than ever before. The species that had once been confined to a single planet now possessed the technology and the will to spread across the galaxy. Commander, Baltar's final transmission reached the Veloth High Command 3 days later. His warning was added too. The official records and distributed to every military commander in the Empire. The Sol system was placed under permanent quarantine, and any vessel approaching Earth would be destroyed without warning. But the warning came too late. Humanity had already begun its expansion into the galaxy, and the universe would never be the same.